Hi folks, welcome to this book club of the Lotus Eaters on Thomas Ridd's Active Measures. I'm joined by Callum, who I made read the book because I didn't have time, so I was doing other things. And as a quick thing, the only reason we're doing this really is because I was wandering around a bookshop in London once, not long after I'd watched a bunch of Yuri Bezmenov stuff, and it caught my eye in the bookshop. And it was just this little hipster bookshop. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds interesting. Secret history of disinformation and whatever else it is, information warfare. So I thought, okay, well, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I just couldn't find the time to sit down and read it. So I give it to you. So I thought it'd be the sort of thing you'd be interested in. Right, so.
Took bloody forever. So we'll try and get through as much as possible, frankly, because there's a lot to tell. So let's start off. So it's called Active Measures. I did message the author on Twitter. He still seems to be around. So if you want to get in contact with him, that's how, apparently. And we'll start off with Chapter 1, Operation Trust. And this first image here, as you can see, is an image of the Russian spy master, was it Felix Desmiznovsky?
That's right. Pretend that you can't pronounce his name, Callum.
Yeah. So Operation Trust was a counterintelligence operation from the Soviets that pull their intelligence on the world stage as a force to be reckoned with, the author writes. So after they intercepted a message from Estonia from a Russian contacting the monarchist emigres, they interested the monarchists.
How long after is this? Shortly after the Russian Revolution.
This is after the revolution and the Civil War. We've won if we're the Soviets.
Right.
It's over. But because we're Soviets, we're still paralyzed by fear constantly of
the monarchists
counter-revolutions.
could come back. It's just like the French revolutionaries. There's a conspiracy of the monarchists in some foreign country, and we have to worry about them.
Exactly. Yeah. So they did a counter-intelligence operation called Operation Trust. So they intercepted a message from Estonia with a Russian trying to contact the monarchist emigres, and then they interested the monarchist into being an agent for them. So the guy who sent the message. So I presume they threatened him and whatnot as well. So this guy ended up running the biggest monarchist organization in Russia as a front for Soviet intelligence to counter the monarchists.
Why?
It's the fact that they presumably bullied him, convinced him. There's a bit of both there. And
keep your friends close and your enemies closer. That's what this is.
Yeah, so we'll have this guy. He'll run the front for the monarchists, and then we'll get names of who is a monarchist outside and inside the country and be able to shut them down as and when. And everyone trusted him, so it just got to the point where the biggest monarchist organization was a Soviet front.
But I mean, it wouldn't have existed if they didn't create it.
Yes. So, but that's the thing, the guy doing it.
Very created and funded a monarchist organization. Why?
At least we control it. So they've got all the names. So this front was called Trust.
It's just like Pravda, isn't it? Truth.
I know, it's really funny. And they managed to doubt the emigrated Russians and foreign intelligence services into believing it was genuinely real. Right. So you have like letters from MI5 being like, oh, this is this operation by the monarchists called Trust. And they're going to overthrow the Soviets. And it's just like, bro, it's long since gone when that was going to happen.
Right.
So it also allowed them to lure one agent to Russia for execution, which they then covered up with fake bodies at the Finnish border. So
how did that go?
It went perfectly. No one questioned anything. It also allowed them to lure a writer to Russia to give them a fake tour of the Soviet Union, only the best, of course. And he then went back and propagated it into a book in the 1920s.
So took him around a few model cities.
Yeah, but because he didn't think he was being led around, because they were able to convince him. I think they snuck him through the border, like cutting the wire and stuff as well.
Right.
Yeah, give him a real convincing tour.
Right, so this is some lefty journo from the West, right?
Yeah, who's like, oh, I wonder what this new socialism thing's like.
I bet they're doing socialism perfectly. They sneak me in, give me they don't know that I'm here, and then, oh, look, it's all going brilliantly.
Yeah, so this is a great example of Soviet genius and competence in intelligence.
Is this the only example?
No, there are lots, and a lot of them are really autistic. But so this is Felix's, let's say, #1 achievement, and it's also the start of Active Measures.
He does look like a spy master, doesn't he?
It's so memetic, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's also the aspect, of course, that Active Measures are not, as you've asked previously, about assassinating political leaders.
Ideological subversion.
All about ideological subversion, disinformation, and things like this.
So just because obviously Mr. Bezmenov is going to come up in this conversation, and that's how he was describing it, wasn't it? Something like 85% of their budget and time was spent on ideological subversion to make the opponent doubt their own grasp on reality, right? And so that's the purpose of all of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's psychological warfare, like gaslighting.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's really weird, and it wasn't really a thing up until the sort of Soviets kind of took it up as a major stay of their intelligence service. So as well.
And now it's mainstream media.
Sure. So if we go to the next link here, we can see image number 2, which is where we're going to be moving. So this is Japan's Mein Kampf.
Right.
So the Decatur Memorial, as you can see there.
Yeah.
And this is a
Tanaka Memorial.
Sorry. Yeah, and it's a propaganda film that we're looking at here because it lived on in American consciousness long after its.
Why would anyone think that Japan had dreams of a world empire?
Yeah. So this is a weird one. So a forged document is what this is, laying out Japanese plans for world domination. Now, Felix, the guy
I assume this is before the Japanese invaded almost all of East Asia.
Yes.
Right, okay.
So it's like, haha, those Japs, they're going to invade everywhere, I swear.
The Japs are like, that's right, but where did this come from?
Leaked our plan. So Felix, the guy previously, is likely responsible for creating it, or he was fooled by the Chinese.
Right,
There's a really weird moment where he's arguing with the Soviets, and they're like, the Japs, they're not really a threat. And he buggers off for a few weeks and then comes back and is like, I've got this memorial, which shows they're going to take over the world. Did you write that? No, I swear. It's strange. No one's really sure.
See, this is the thing about spy games, isn't it? You can't trust anything.
No, and we don't even know if he was fooled. So, even after all this time. So, after an English copy got to Shanghai and was released, as you know, the rest of the world knew about it as well as the Soviets then translated it into 5 languages, except they took out references where the Japs would be saying that they would get Soviet help to dominate the world. Of course.
But the Imperial Japanese were not communists.
No.
Why would the Soviets work with them and not the Chinese? This is obviously a fraud.
Yeah, but this wasn't picked up. The Soviet translations were taken further, it seems, than the original English that was made.
And if the Soviets are the ones translating it, I'm going to guess it's a Soviet fraud.
But then also, why would the Soviets put that in the original?
Uh,
Again, this is why no one knows.
It's a double play, isn't it? It's like, well, they think that this is a thing, so we'll make them think that this isn't the thing, and therefore they'll think something that we think that they think.
But these people are also that smart in this regard. They might have done that.
Yeah, exactly. These big brain hours, these.
Yeah. So as Japan got more aggressive, it obviously looked prophetic. And so this is a great example of a successful disinformation campaign. And the reference here being that after the war, it was still mentioned as, we should have known because the Decatur Memorial came out telling us the Japs would try to take over the world. I was like, but it was fake. So
this is like, well, I've created a book. I found this book that's a conspiracy for the Americans to sell products all over the world. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, but they are going to do that.
But this is the debate. So it's a very successful disinformation campaign in that regard.
Yeah.
But it also reflected a reality.
Yeah.
You might not have known that before, but obviously now we do know.
It's a totally believable thing that the Japanese are going to get militaristic.
Yeah, but it's also at the same time, it's a narrative that's out there. It's favorable to you. It's probably true. In which case, make a piece of disinformation that reinforces it. And then everyone will believe it's true. Even if it might, there's a slight chance it might not happen. But people will be swayed to your side.
And it'll definitely get people alerted against the Japanese.
So the next chapter is called the Whale and Forgeries. I don't have an image for this because I couldn't find that one interesting. So a New York police department leader, Mr. Whalen, he was very anti-communist.
Based.
Comrade.
Yeah.
His men, quote, believed that communism was simply communism simply represented organized violence and should be outlawed as an insurgent force.
Absolutely based. That's exactly...
You know what's coming.
That's exactly how it should have been.
So this was the early 20s as well.
Well, just to be clear, right? Because the Americans consider themselves to be a propositional nation, which means you can't tolerate a proposition other than the American Republic.
This is how it was considered. There's also the influence of the white Russians who have left, and most of them were in America. Right up until the late 20s and whatnot, they're still lobbying hard. Most of the world has recognized the Soviet Union as a country, and the white Russians are like, no, they dare.
Yeah.
And so they're having an influence too.
Right, okay.
So his men uncovered 5 letters purporting that the Soviets had a direct line to an organization in New York. They released
the largest monarchist front in New York.
They released these documents showing that there were communists operating in the United States. They were shown to be forgeries relatively easily because they were crap forgeries, and most likely from the white Russians who were trying to keep the United States from recognizing the Soviet Union late into the 30s. There is another theory from the white Russians who claim that the Soviets made these cheap forgeries to be leaked to create distrust of anti-communism. And we have no idea. Even now. Absolutely no idea who's behind it.
Why would we distrust anti-communism?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's innately, intrinsically good.
Well, it was to show that the anti-communists
Trustworthy.
were making up bollocks. There's reds in the beds. What if there are reds in the
Yeah, it
beds?
turns out that was all true.
Yeah. So either way, it shows the power of creating false documents to confirm a theory that most already believe. And the organizations mentioned did have ties to Moscow. Therefore, the forged documents, although false, might as well have been true as well.
Just like the previous one. Well, it's not true, but it is also true.
Yeah, so this is the easy side of active measures. You don't
Yeah.
it's not really disinformation in a way, you could argue, because it reflects a deeper truth.
It's accidentally true. That's the
yes,
thing.
but this will get more and more muddy.
You've got to be purposefully, deliberately true for something to actually be true.
So the next section is called Forge. This chapter, again, I don't have a picture for. So this is American disinformation. So 2 weeks after the Japanese surrender, President Truman decided to disband the Office for Strategic Services. 2 years later, they had to reform the whole bloody thing as the CIA. So, huge waste of time. Thanks for that, bro.
Because I take it the Russians didn't disband any of theirs.
No, this is a sign of the times. People didn't really seem to think that intelligence operations were worthwhile, or they hadn't really been done.
Yeah. And the communists are like, aha.
This is Lenin's philosophy 101.
Yeah.
Disinformation
Yes.
and subversion. So they've got it philosophically outright. The rest of the world is still catching up in this regard. So Action Group B, so they were set up in Berlin, Operation Base,
Right.
Bob,
Yeah.
by the CIA. And they did some things like created 180,000 copies of
I thought the Soviets controlled Berlin.
No, it was divided into two zones.
Oh, of course, yeah. Of
So
course,
there
yeah.
was the French, English,
Yeah,
and American
yeah,
zone that
yeah.
became West Berlin,
Yeah.
East Berlin, Soviet. I love how they got half. Why did we give them half? Give them a quarter.
Well, I mean, they took it. So why did they give us any of it?
Still.
I would have been like, no.
Operation Unthinkable was
Capture your own Berlin if you want one.
not unreasonable. Sure.
Well, I agree.
So this group, Action Group B, they created 180,000 copies of a forged youth newspaper for the communist side of Germany,
Right.
Junge Welt, and filled it with disinformation to try and subvert socialist spirits of a mass rally of the youth that was happening. Really weird.
I mean, why bother doing anything?
I don't know.
Because, I mean, like, if there's one thing you can tell, it's that East Germany is still demoralized from communism.
But there's, again, this is maybe a sign of the times. It looks so weird to me. They had a youth conference in which the youth of all the world were to join and do a thing or something. What are you talking about? And
So,
and then the Americans spent all this money making fake newspapers with like sections in it that were forged, but not the whole thing. Weird.
I mean, I guess looking in retrospect, it was obvious the communists were going to demoralize themselves, but like,
It's also a bit of a stab in the dark by the
Yeah.
CIA.
oh, yeah.
What should we do? Okay, let's try something. Well, they tried this. There was a better thing that Action Group B did, which is that they were also a fighting group against inhumanity. This is the Kampfgruppe. So they were there to document Soviet war crimes, such as putting the Germans in prisoner of war camps or Holocaust camps and keeping them there long after was reasonable, or just killing them. And document that, make it available and known, and that would show that they're oppressors. So that's that.
Okay.
So moving on to chapter 5, this is the Kampfgruppe that I mentioned just at the end there. I don't have an image for them either. So the Kampfgruppe, the fighting group against inhumanity, they called themselves, had established itself with a clear mission: to expose the inhuman conditions in the Soviet zone concentration camps, but soon expanded its operations to compiling lists of Germans working with Soviet informers and broadcasting their names on American radio in Berlin so everyone could hear, which I think is really funny.
I mean, how did this go down?
I mean, people would know that their neighbor was a spy and then presumably would punch the fuck out of them because how have you been, my wife disappeared last week. Guess who that was? The group also researched and publicized data on the abuse afflicted by the People's Police in East Berlin, just that they're commies and awful.
Yeah.
And before the fighting group against inhumanity, political warfare and information operations had long been a byproduct, a side activity, a risk. Disinformation required publicity, and publicity ran counter to the organizational culture of any self-respecting intelligence agency. So this is the shift.
Yeah, right.
Remember how they all used to be secret things, and now the CIA's on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Weird. And
it's very creepy. Like the CIA's Twitter account is just a very creepy thing.
yeah, but this is at the very start of them realizing if you're going to do active measures, you need to be publicly known. And therefore, any compromise, people pointing out that you're funded by the CIA, doesn't even matter. Because who cares? We all knew it. So you'll see this going forward. So among the fighting group's first operations, this is cute as well, was a graffiti campaign. On July 20th, 1949, in commemoration of a failed assassination attempt against Hitler 5 years earlier, youth groups swore out large paint Fs, F for freedom, as well as adversity, so the Freiheit and Freundschaft, on streets, shop windows, and walls throughout Berlin, and distributed flyers to propagate the message, saying what it was about. The East German regime reacted by hiring contractors to turn the F into FDJ, an acronym of the regime's youth group.
Right, okay.
The FDJ.
Yeah.
Why would you not just take them off?
Yeah.
But again, it's the smartness of the communists. Okay, we'll turn that into FDJ.
Yeah.
It's like,
but it's also the pedantry of it as well.
Like
a normal reason would just get rid of it, but it's like no, we're gonna go, and every single one was gonna add it on. It's just really pedantic.
But it also counters the flies. So anyone who read them and then comes across FDJ, freedom, because it was I think it was the Free German Youth, FDJ,
right.
Freie Deutsche Junge.
Yeah.
So there is some intelligence to it. So another core activity was organizing lectures and presentations. 147 lectures were given in 1952, and this only explodes over the years. So Hildebrandt, the guy in charge, went out of his way to highlight the humanity of occupation, employing disinformation tactics in the process. Many East Germans have recalled stories of Russian friendliness. One such story was that of an old, sick German woman in a cottage in the countryside. One day, a Russian woman stopped by the cottage and asked the old German woman for a glass of water. The Russian woman explains that she worked in the portion of the border with the Russian woman had left behind. Day after day, the Russian woman took a glass of water and left some food, neither woman commenting on the exchange. "I have to go back to Russia," the Russian woman said one day. When the German woman thanked her for all the food she had left, she responded, "Don't thank me, thank him," adding, "You live so close to freedom, maybe the East Zone will be free soon, but when will I be free?" The Russian's never going to be free.
No.
But it's interesting that he took out of his way to add stories like that to try and humanize the situation, because if you just make it communist bad, it's a bit boring. Also, it might not reflect a reality someone has had on the ground.
Yeah, because it does mean Russian bad.
No.
It means regime bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They also engaged in something which is really funny called administrative harassment.
I'm listening.
So these are just dumb operations, the kind of thing 4chan would do now.
Yeah.
So the fighting group forged a letter purportedly from the mining division of DIA, a large state-owned trade enterprise of the East Germans, and sent it to an East German mining company, Faben & Co. in Schlefenberg. The letter instructed the mining company to, quote, immediately cease its exports of silicous quartz and sand to its present export partners. And they did. They
that
just,
must have been really annoying.
Yeah, and then they would come back the next day. Why the hell have you stopped production? We got your letter. What fucking letter?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh, crap. So that's a few days worth of production loss.
Yeah. No, that's hilarious.
Again, petty, but really funny.
Yeah.
So there's one other, I'll skip over it, but essentially they sent it to a bunch of retail stores, and then they all ran out of food. And the CIA were laughing all the time. But there's also the fact that the fighting group funded by the CIA was completely halal. As I mentioned, if they were compromised, if the East Germans said, did you know this is all funded by the CIA? They were kind of open about it. So no one really gave a crap. So it's also an operation by the CIA learning being public can be a benefit. To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.